My goodness. I said last week that we could be in for some chaos, and boy, were we. 7 of the top 19 teams suffer losses, and some of them were rather damaging. This is one of those weeks that people who love the sport look back on and point to in reference because all 7 of those losses came on the road. We're going to talk winners. We're going to talk losers heading into the final week of the regular season. What do we do with the SEC? We'll talk about that. The Big 12 finally clearing up, but somehow teams like Baylor, Texas Tech, even 6-5 West Virginia still have a chance at the conference championship game and thus the college football playoff. We're going to have our penultimate top 12 rankings, and we're just going to shoot from the hip tonight, man. We got a lot to talk about. It's going to be fun. If you're new to the show, you picked a fantastic week to join and to start following. This is Always Talking Ball with Lance Barton. I'm Tyler Noe. As always, this episode is brought to you by Home Field Apparel. Got to get a shout out to our sponsors there. Promo code ATB15 for 15% off checkout. We saw our boy Stanford Steve on game day yesterday rocking the Tulane bomber jacket. That was pretty sick.
Hey, two weeks in a row, man. He was rocking, I think it was Kent State last week on the hoodie. Those really soft hoodies.
Yeah.
He was rocking a Kent State hoodie on game day last week. So
Yep.
I had my, unfortunately, I had my Alabama hoodie on yesterday. Yeah, man, Home Field's making their way around, man. ATB 15 for 15% off your first order at homefieldapparel.com or the Home Field app.
Yep, Christmas is coming soon. Those are great gifts to get for your family members and stuff, and we'll get you 15% off. Lance, let's start off in Columbus. We're big noon kickoff. That was the headliner of the week. Trust me, we'll get to much more after that. But let's talk about Columbus. Let's talk about, I said we're going to talk about winners and losers. And obviously, no doubt about it, Ohio State won this game. 38-15 on the scoreboard. Props to Indiana for playing about a quarter and a half, maybe even a half of really good football. I mean, really solid first drive. I always say, what do you do after the scripted drives? That's very important. And they didn't do much after the scripted drives. Curtis Rourke, I think, threw for a little under 70 yards. It was pretty evident about middle of the second quarter that when Jim Knowles decided to start bringing the house, you got Curtis Rourke seeing ghosts out there. And IU's offensive line was overmatched. Their defensive line couldn't get pressure on Howard. Their DBs had trouble guarding the Ohio State wide receivers. And honestly, IU did pretty well on the ground, and they did decently well stopping the run. But again, when you have that much of a mismatch in talent, and yes, I know they're number 2 and the number 5, but the talent gap is wide between Ohio State and Indiana. When you have that big of a mismatch, you can't muff a punt with 2 minutes to go in the first half in a tie game. That's a backbreaker. And then first drive of the second half, you can't let Caleb Downs just kind of scoot through your return team there.
I mean, they basically
that was it right there.
They basically gave the Buckeyes 14 points on special teams.
Yeah.
And so I agree with you. The talent gap ended up showing without question. The adjustments that Jim Knowles made on defense. You know, we talked about it, man, going into the game. I felt like that Ohio State was going to open it up more in the passing game because I felt like that the biggest difference that Ohio State had, obviously with center Seth McLaughlin going down and other offensive linemen going down for Ohio State, and the fact that Indiana was the number 1 ranked rush defense in the country going into that game. The Ohio State has just dudes on the outside on the perimeter that other teams don't. And Edbuka and Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate and multiple tight ends. I mean, you know, just an embarrassment of riches on the outside for Ohio State. And Will Howard has been very efficient and accurate all year long. He has. And he was, again, he made some really good throws in some pretty trash weather conditions as well. And then on the other side of the ball, Curtis Rourke did not have any time at all to throw the ball.
Even when he did have time and they didn't bring blitzing, his timing was all off because, you know, he kind of always felt that it was coming, even when it wasn't.
Yeah, he was not in rhythm. And, you know, the announcers, you know, old Gus and Klatt talked about that it's a rhythm-based offense a lot with Curtis Rourke, and he obviously was out of rhythm. And honestly, the majority of the biggest plays for Indiana in the game was the pass interference on, I can't remember the guy's last name, number one.
Igbenogson,
Yeah, Igbenogson.
He
That
had a
was the
couple.
best. Yeah, he had like three. He had three at least, but he might have
Mhm.
had four PIs. That was really the biggest plays on offense for Indiana pretty much all game long.
Yeah, it was kind of shocking to me that they, and I get it, he didn't have a lot of time, but they didn't, after that first drive, they didn't take a lot of shots downfield. They didn't target Denzel Burke like a lot of other teams have this year. And yeah, I mean, I get that you don't have a lot of time, but it was that was noticeable.
Yeah, it was. And I mean, again, spotting Ohio State 14 points on special teams. That's just, I don't care
Yeah.
who you are. But definitely, like you said, when the talent gap is that much, that's just not going to be there. And I mean, honestly, at one point during the game, towards the end, I mean, dude, I'm texting you. I try my best not to join the narrative of that, but like that's really why everybody was so intrigued in the game was, can Indiana hang? And did Indiana belong in the playoff hunt? And after the game was over, I think the majority of people felt like Indiana's probably not in. I mean, I even saw like a lot of like Big Cat from Barstool and a lot of other people were tweeting out when the game ended that Indiana didn't belong in the playoffs, and don't be surprised if they're going to be left out now. And then
my how things change in 6 hours.
I mean, I think you were alluding to at the beginning, you know, some teams won bigger than others on the day. You know, we're talking about winners and losers. There were two winners in this game.
Yeah.
There were. Ohio State was a huge winner, and Indiana was still a winner at the end of the day because of how much carnage took place around them in college football. Yeah, I mean, Indiana's going to be in the playoff. As long as they take care of business against Purdue this coming up week, they're going to be in the playoff because of all the carnage that took place that we're going to talk about later on here throughout the episode. But yeah, I mean, as far as the play on the field and in this game, they were complete. It was a mismatch. It was. Do I think if they played again in better weather conditions somewhere in a dome environment or whatever, and it's not at Ohio State, would it be significantly different? Probably not. Maybe it's a little bit closer, but I think if Indiana played Ohio State 10 times, they would need Ohio State to make significant amount of mistakes to beat them. With the talent gap that there is, which again, it happens in college football. We saw it happen yesterday.
Honestly, this year, this would probably be the case for a lot of teams.
Yeah, it would.
We're like, honestly, we watched the Ohio State Penn State game, and we said what we thought about that game, even though it was a 7-point score on the scoreboard.
Yeah.
What was much different about Indiana's game against Ohio State versus Penn State, given the fact that Penn State got them at home?
Yeah, I think the biggest difference for me was at least Penn State did. I mean, they threatened to score multiple times in the red zone throughout the game. Didn't get in. Just brutal, like red zone offense against Ohio State. And obviously they got the pick six against Will Howard early on in the game. But overall, I mean, yeah, I walked away from Ohio State. Like, I personally felt like Penn State belonged on the field more against Ohio State than Indiana did between those two matchups. But again, it's obviously a big deal that Indiana had to go to Columbus and play in bad weather as opposed to Ohio State going on the road and, you know, Penn State getting Ohio State in Happy Valley. But, I mean, doesn't really matter, man. Honestly, at the end of the day, I mean, the only thing that really happened to Indiana because of all the carnage that went on is they're just going to be probably traveling. Maybe traveling, maybe traveling in the opening round of the playoff as opposed to hosting somebody. But yeah, they're going to be in the playoff, man.
Well, now they're, ESPN Strength of Record came out today, and they're still 7th. Their strength of schedule popped all the way up to 51st.
Yep.
And so it's hovering right there. I mean, it's 15 spots below Texas, right? So head of Miami, so everyone wanted to look at strength of schedule and, in some people's mind out there, like you should get more credit for playing the games than actually winning the game. So why not give Indiana credit for showing up on Saturday and playing the game?
Yeah, it was, I just can't believe it all happened. What all ended up happening after that.
Yeah. Let's move on. We really want to talk about it. We talked about the big game, and it was kind of a dud after the first half, but just a tough day for the SEC crowd on Saturday. I mean, Elko, he slipped up. He said, earlier this week, we're focused on Texas, and I mean Auburn. Should have been on Auburn, right? Shouldn't have been uttering Texas out of your mouth.
We tried to warn him.
Lane Kiffin decided to spend some of his week talking about how coaches didn't want to play in the title game, and guess what? You ain't got to worry about that now, Lane. So go on, pack your bags. You're pretty much eliminated from the playoffs. And you, my friend, you were admittedly a little worried about the Alabama-Oklahoma game against the Sooners. You just wanted to focus on the task at hand instead of the playoffs, instead of all that talk. And yeah, let's just start there, man. I don't know what went down. I just know that Alabama got beat down and dominated in a way that I can't really remember seeing in the last 2 decades.
Since 2003, this was the worst regular season loss for Alabama as far as point differential wise. They haven't been beaten by 3 touchdowns plus in a regular season game since 2003 when they lost 27-3 to LSU. I'm going to repeat that. This was the worst loss for Alabama in the regular season since 2003. So let's just call it what it is.
Yeah.
This was a masterclass in trying to teach a bunch of 18 to 22-year-olds of how to not be prepared week in and week out for no matter who the opponent is, no matter what's going on externally, all the external factors, the playoff talk, all of that. This was a masterclass that could be, they should show this videotape of this Alabama team and how just shitty they looked against Oklahoma yesterday. Of anybody else going forward when they think they're feeling themselves a little bit when it comes to this late in the season and all the talk about the playoffs, when all that matters is you just go out and win your games. Just go play and win your games and everything else take care of itself. And so this is as disappointed, and this is not being prisoner of the moment. This is as disappointed as I have ever been in my fandom as an Alabama football fan.
Yeah, it was totally different than the Vandy game earlier this year.
Completely different.
Yeah.
That was the definition of, flat spot. Vandy couldn't do anything wrong.
Yeah.
There were goofy things that happened, like the tip ball that got picked off and ran back for a touchdown. That was more shocking. Last night wasn't even as shocking. It was more just complete and utter disappointment in the effort, in the body language, in the attitude, in the lack of just killer instinct and enthusiasm and just everything, man. That team that showed up in Baton Rouge a couple of weeks ago looked like they were a bunch of sharks in blood-infested waters that wanted blood.
Mm-hmm.
This team showed up in Norman yesterday and looked like a bunch of mentally soft, physically soft, get me off this field football team. And it was evident early on. Tyler can attest for this. I texted before the game started, Alabama was about to kick off, and so was Auburn. And I said, Auburn's about to take it to Texas A&M, and Alabama's about to struggle but win. Well, I was obviously wrong about that. They struggled, but they did not win.
Yeah.
This was a coaching mismatch, bro.
Yeah.
Is what it was.
You mentioned masterclass. Like, what an absolute masterclass on how to defend Jalen Milroe. Like, Brent Venables said, you are not going to beat us with your legs. And just an absolutely stark contrast to what Brian Kelly went into his preparation against Alabama and what he has done the past 2 years and letting Milroe just run all over him. Venables is like, you're going to have to beat us a different way, man, because it ain't happening tonight. And we all knew Oklahoma, obviously, I think they got a better defense than LSU, but the team overall has just struggled. And, I mean, they showed up big last night.
Yeah, they just whipped Alabama's ass on both sides of the line of scrimmage. They were better prepared, much better game plan. Venables took Jalen Milroe and the entire offensive staff for Alabama, like Nick Sheridan, offensive coordinator, Kalen DeBoer. Brent Venables took all of them to school last night. Oklahoma, early on, like at one point the game was 3-3, and it felt like that Alabama was down 2 touchdowns for how much better Oklahoma was.
Yeah,
and just really no excuse, man. It kind of puts a bow on this year of all the people talking about how now that's 3 road games that Alabama has lost now this year. It's been multiple games where you're watching and it's like the offense has just can't do anything. And it goes back to now what I talked about after the Tennessee game when I sounded like I was in a panic after the Tennessee game when I told everyone, honestly, people were kind of bashing me and bashing anybody that was questioning Jalen Milroe at the time. But I said, if you take Jalen Milroe's legs away, Alabama's offense is average to below average right now. And that Milroe can't run the Kalen DeBoer offense like Kalen DeBoer wants to run his offense. Because Milroe can't make the throws, can't drop back in the pocket, and consistently distribute the football to playmakers down the field. He can't. That's what Michael Penix did for him in Washington. That is a stark contrast from what from Jalen Milroe is from Michael Penix. And it showed again last night. The second half against Georgia, Kirby Smart at halftime made adjustments and took Jalen Milroe's legs away. Tennessee took Jalen Milroe's legs away. South Carolina, for the most part, took Jalen Milroe's legs away. And now Oklahoma. So what do all those teams have in common? They all have defensive staffs and defensive players along the defensive front and linebacker position to be able to do that. LSU doesn't. That's why Milroe completely exposed them. And a few other teams that Alabama's played this year when Milroe's gotten hot with his legs. They just weren't going to let him do that last night. And I don't know, man. The Feinbaum show, the legends and the callers is going to be calling in the Feinbaum. It's going to be even worse than it's been all year. And to be honest with you, man, I can't blame them. If Oklahoma would have just came out and like Alabama like played hard and played well or whatever, and Oklahoma just beat them, whatever. But to just look defeated and just weak, man, just weak.
Yeah,
across the board. I never thought I'd ever see that. Never thought I'd ever see that.
To have everything in front of you too. Like all they had to do was win out. They're in the SEC championship game, probably in the playoffs. You know, the offensive line got whipped all night. I didn't help that Deontay Lawson went down.
That was brutal.
Yeah, and I mean it was
and I mean, man, to be honest with you, in a college football game in 2024, I mean, I know a lot of people's probably going to be all the blame is going to be on Jalen Milroe and as far as everybody else. And they're going to probably talk about the defense or whatever. I mean, Milroe gave their a pick six. 7 of their 24 points was a pick six. And another one was when he threw another pick that gave Oklahoma the ball way deep in Alabama territory. Defensively, Alabama didn't play well, but they gave up 328 total yards. In 2024, if you only give up 328 total yards, you should win every game.
Yeah, and they gave up 328
Alabama
yards.
Had 234 yards.
Total. They gave up 328 yards to an offense that has just been awful this whole season. And like I told you, going into that first half, it was 3-3. In Oklahoma looked content. Let's just run the ball. Let's kick a field goal. Let's go up 6-3. Running back goes around the right side, gets in for the touchdown, and it's like, you know, it's certain like just kind of lapses in judgment like that. You were talking in the preview about if they just go in, they play well, they don't turn the ball over, they don't, you know, have these games where they commit penalties, and they didn't. Like again, for the first half, they didn't have any turnovers. They had 2 penalties in the first half. Like, and again, just 3 points, like drop passes, like everything. It was just,
it was a recipe. It was a recipe for disaster, man.
Yeah. I did not see it coming.
No, drop passes, missing assignments on defense, allowing Oklahoma to get to the perimeter whenever they wanted to. 3 turnovers in the second half. Just not prepared at all. And I just want to say this. I'm going to get it out. Alabama did not lose this game because of the call. But dude, that was. I seriously, I'm not being prisoner of a moment. I think it was the worst call I've ever seen.
Did we hear anything after the fact from anybody? Any accountability? Nothing? Usual?
It'll come out this week. The SEC will release some bullshit statement that'll be like, "Oh, the officials missed it. You know, we're gonna make sure that this doesn't, you know, whatever." But like the part that is just so egregious is it's all over the internet. Is the dude didn't even throw the procedural flag, which is like which happens at the line of scrimmage before the ball is snapped. When the ball is snapped, that's when the flag's supposed to go up for when you're illegal formation for a wide receiver being covered up.
Yeah.
He doesn't throw it. It's on video. He literally didn't throw it until Ryan Williams made maybe the catch of the year, by the way, in the corner of the end zone for a touchdown.
Yeah.
He didn't throw it until then.
Yeah, I would love to hear an explanation because, like, the official call on the field was like illegal touching, loss of down. So originally, I thought he did a fade route, kind of stepped out of bounds first, but you look at the replay, he's not anywhere near out of bounds, and so that's why, like, I look back, I'm like, okay, maybe he threw the flag because then he touched it first, right? But none of it makes sense. It's the same crew that did the Georgia-Texas game.
That's a good point. He threw the flag because he waited till Ron Williams called it because he was the first person to catch it, an illegal touching. Okay, so that's why he threw it when he threw it. Okay,
yeah,
that makes me at least get rid of the conspiracy theory stuff. But either way, I mean, he was covered up on the line of scrimmage. Why didn't he throw the flag then? That was the whole reason for the flag.
Yeah.
But whatever, doesn't matter. Alabama wasn't winning the game anyway because of that. But it's, I don't know, man. It's they've got the Iron Bowl coming up this week, and it could get a lot worse really quick. We're going to talk about that game more throughout the week.
Yeah.
But dude, it's not good in Tuscaloosa right now. The only thing that could save them would be the thing that will piss off the rest of the college football world would be Alabama somehow getting the benefit of the doubt again, and this committee somehow saving them and giving them some ranking that they don't deserve. I'll say it as an Alabama fan. They do not deserve to be in this playoff mix right now.
Mm-mm.
I don't care what happened with all the carnage around them.
Yeah.
Right now, as of today, they don't deserve to be in this playoff. Don't lose to Vandy and don't lose to Oklahoma. I don't care if they're bad. I don't care if those two teams are even better than some of these teams that other conferences are playing. If you want a chance to compete for the championship of college football, you can't lose these games. So, if they're ranked like out of it Tuesday night, don't be surprised, man, if it gets significantly worse really quick next Saturday in Tuscaloosa in the Iron Bowl.
You mean like the play on the field, the fan reaction?
All of it, bro.
Yeah.
You think the fans are bad right now?
I mean, I know Hugh Freeze he's always come to play against Alabama for some reason. No matter what kind of team he has, he's got a plan for him.
Yeah, dude, again, you think it's bad now. You let Alabama go on Saturday and lose at home to a 5-win Auburn team and lose again. And you think it's bad for DeBoer now? Yeah. Hadn't even started yet, bro.
Yeah.
All the things he's done this year won't compare. All those things combined won't compare to how the fan base and how everybody will react after Saturday if they somehow go lose that game Saturday, which they absolutely can.
Yeah. Another coach in the SEC who probably start having a little pressure on him. That's Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss. I think if we're looking back, in a couple weeks here after the playoff rankings come out in almost, exactly 2 weeks here, we're looking at teams on the outside looking in. Ole Miss has undoubtedly got to be the number one team that's going to be like, man, we really, really screwed this up. We missed our shot. Because I think if we're looking at the schedules at the beginning of the year with Ole Miss and we talked about it, we broke down the schedules. I believe they were in that pack of 4, right, with Texas and Missouri and Tennessee.
Yep.
And
Texas A&M.
Very, very favorable schedules. And then their non-conference was nothing. And they took care of that. But then losing in Kentucky, losing at LSU, and you lose on Saturday to Florida in a game that the line got bet all the way up from 9.5 to 12. And you just absolutely blow it. This season is nothing but just an utter failure for the Ole Miss football program.
I agree. And I think Ole Miss fans will tell you that as well. And this falls into the category, man, of like, well, I mean, Ole Miss, if they still go 9-3, that's a great year for Ole Miss. Don't tell their fans that. They don't want to hear that. All that money that you spent on all these great players in the transfer portal to have the talent that you had. And we've been talking about it. I've been talking about them for 6 or 7 weeks.
Yeah.
That they're one of the best football teams in the country on paper. Mm-hmm. Problem is like our boy Freddie and even you and other people have said, at some point, Lane Kiffin's going to strike again.
Yeah.
And it did. It just did. Dude, another game were just recipe for losing and for getting upset. Ole Miss dropped countless amounts of passes. Their best receiver got injured again, and Trey Harris. They're going up and down the field, and they're multiple times. They had 3 possessions in the first half where they had it deep in the red zone, in Florida's red zone, and they got stopped on 4th and 1 twice, running the exact same play with their 320-pound J.J. Begeese lineman, where they basically go wildcat with 320-pounder, and he literally ran to the exact same spot both times, and it got blown up both times. And there's just no source of imagination for that play. If you're Florida, you could literally take every player you have and just stack the line of scrimmage.
Yeah.
And, I mean, Jackson Dart can run too. At least he has a threat to throw the ball if he's in the game. But he got stopped twice on 4th and 1. And then they missed a chip shot 34-yard field goal. So worst case scenario, they should have gotten 9 points out of that. Worst case scenario, they get 9 points. They kicked 3 field goals. But instead, they got stopped on 4th and 1 twice and missed a field goal. Like I said, multiple drop passes. They had a couple of, not like they didn't have like a ton of penalties, but they had key penalties at key moments. Like they kept drives going for Florida. They had a horse collar tackle one time that kept the drive going for Florida that Florida ended up scoring on after the fact, after they were getting Florida off the field. And it just, just didn't work out, man. And
my big worry all season long, I've voiced it many times, was just not 100% faith in Jackson Dart.
Yeah.
When the time came, and I mean, he was just begging to throw interceptions there in the fourth quarter, like just some, going triple coverage in the end zone when you're driving, like trying to take deep shots, all that stuff. He threw a pick, it got overturned. He threw another pick. I mean, he was already crying on the sidelines. You got to wipe those tears off, get back on the field, throws another pick. I mean, it didn't help that Trey Harris went down with an injury either, but I mean, he's been out for a lot of the year, and they've been completely fine without him. So it was just, again, on the other side, you can't say enough about the job that Billy Napier has done. Getting this team to 6-5. They got Florida State on deck. Let's be honest, they should win that. They should get to 7-5 with this schedule. And Napier's already coming back in 25. You got DJ Lagway hopefully coming back. I'm assuming that was one of the big reasons they kept Billy Napier. And
Jaden Ball.
Yeah, and the only thing you've got to think, if they're looking up and guys around the country see a guy like Lagway playing really good quarterback ball at Florida, hey, let's maybe look into transferring at Florida. Let's get some more players in here. Let's get some guys around him. Like, I think they're going to be players in the transfer portal if they finish off Florida State, maybe win a bowl game, whatever. I think they're going to go into the offseason with a lot of momentum. The only issue for them is that next year they get this same schedule, and it's just flip-flopped. So they got to go to Miami next year.
To LSU.
They get Georgia, obviously. They go to LSU. They go to Ole Miss. They go to A&M. They get Texas at home. They get Tennessee at home, all that stuff. So the schedule is still brutal because of the idiotic way that the SEC set this up. And, but I mean, I think all signs are pointing up right now for Florida.
They are, man. I didn't have it on my bingo card that Florida was going to be the more well-coached team 2 weeks in a row against LSU and against Ole Miss.
Well, maybe against LSU, but whatever.
Yeah. But Napier coach really never panicked. They made the right decisions. There were a couple times that they showed the graphic where Napier would normally go for it on 4th down in that situation, and he does lean on some analytic stuff. But they said this year he's gotten a little away from some of that, and it showed, which, again, the analytics are the analytics, but they're not always right. They're just not. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you got to go with the feel of the football game, of what's going on in the game. And he did yesterday. He punted a couple times when he should have. He kicked a field goal one time when he should have on that bomb that dude kicked for like 50-something yard field goal. And they rewarded him for it. So Lagway he's not putting up some like numbers that just makes you just fall out of your chair like like Cam Ward does or whatever.
Yeah.
But he's just efficient. He's not making mistakes. He elevates the play. Like Napier talked about it, how the guy just elevates the play of others around him, and you can see it with this team. Ole Miss, again, had trouble running the football. It was a problem. And it was a problem in short-yarded situations. I've told Tyler all year because not unfortunately, fortunately, because they've actually been really good to me this year, and the best bets that I put on them, I lost them this week against Florida, but there's been 3 or 4 other occasions where I've won with them that I'm sitting there watching them play, and they seem like they always get stuffed on 3rd and short and 4th and short. And then they showed the graphic during the game that they are one of the worst teams in the Power 4 in 3rd and short yardage situations running the football. I was like, okay, well, that makes sense because I've watched it all year, and they show it, and it happened again. So as far as Ole Miss going forward, I don't know roster-wise.
Is it just back to the drawing board and back to another just transfer portal class and
I guess
overload?
I guess, man, because I don't know, and you can't just go. I mean, you're not going to like sit around and pat and go back, but I don't know that they'll ever have on both sides of the ball, especially defensively, the amount of talent that they had on this team.
Yeah.
Their defense was loaded this year at all levels of the defense too, defensive line, DB, and linebacker. So I don't know that the stars will ever align as much as it is. And you're right. After the year's over with, they're going to be kicking themselves. Like, we don't know what this committee is going to do. I know we're going to get way more into this going forward, but I think you would even admit this. Whether people like it or not, it's not going to shock me if this committee somehow has like an Alabama or an Ole Miss, either one, whether they should or shouldn't. They've shown over the years. It's not going to shock me, man, if one of them somehow is still alive. But at this point, we don't have the rankings on Tuesday night. You and I both agree that they shouldn't be, and they probably won't be, but it won't shock me if they are. But at this point, Ole Miss is going to be looking back. And I don't think losing to Florida in the swamp, this Florida team, this version of the Florida team, who's been really good for the last month. Again, if DJ Lagway doesn't go down, they probably beat Georgia. This is not the reason they're not going to make the playoffs. And losing in Baton Rouge is not the reason they're going to not make the playoffs. Losing at home against the worst team in the Southeast, or second worst team in the Southeastern Conference in Kentucky, like they did, that is the reason they're not going to make the playoff.
Yeah. All right, real quick. ACC Conference Outlook, SMU, first year in the league, just runs right through it. They clinched a spot in the championship game. We had them in the over on the win totals, so that was one of the few that we won. A few that I won. They just got to take care of business against Cal next week, and they'll go into that game 11-1.
Be careful.
Miami, what's that?
Be careful, Justin Wolf.
I know. Everyone's got to be careful now. Miami, they've got tricky road game at Syracuse, and that's going to be a high-scoring game right there. Be careful right there.
Hey, Carrier Dome. It's not the JMA Wireless Dome. Carrier Dome.
Yep. Miami wins that one, and they're going to face off against SMU. If Miami loses, it'll be Clemson, no matter what happens in the Clemson-South Carolina game. So that's your ACC picture. Big 12, like I mentioned in the intro, they've got 8 or 9 teams still available. Yes, even West Virginia at 6-5 is available. But if the favorites win out, which is probably highly unlikely, favorites win out, it's Arizona State, Iowa State. Iowa State's got a big one against Kansas State. Arizona State's got the Territorial Cup against Arizona on the road. That's a tricky spot. BYU, Colorado's still in it. I think I've heard if the top 6 lose, it's like Baylor, Texas Tech. If the top 8 lose, somehow it's Iowa State, West Virginia. And again, that would be like one of the few cases. It's a 2% chance that West Virginia has to make the championship game. And if they were to get in at 7-5 and they beat Iowa State, honestly, Big 12's probably left out of the playoff altogether. Because again, it's the 5 highest conference ranked champions. Nothing to do with Power 4 or Group of 5. Very likely a Boise State and a Tulane would be ranked higher than an 8-5 West Virginia.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah,
So
100%.
Yeah. So the Big 12 is just chaos. Props to Kenny Dillingham. He probably locked up Big 12 Coach of the Year yesterday. That was a wild scene in Tempe. Props to BYU for trying to mount another comeback. They tried to do it one more time. Came up 2 yards short.
Pulled it off.
Yes. That was a fun game. Kansas went and just absolutely worked Colorado at Arrowhead Stadium. Kansas is just absolutely pressing the self-destruct button on the Big 12 3 weeks in a row. First team in FBS history that has 3 straight wins over AP ranked teams. If they didn't, I don't know what was going on with them the first month of the season. If they didn't do that, they would be a very dangerous team right now.
You're talking about first team with a losing record that won.
I don't know what it was. It was first. It might have been first team. Well,
I think it's first team.
Sense.
I think it's the first team in the history of college football that with a losing record.
Okay, that
they
makes sense.
won 3 straight weeks against ranked opponents.
Yeah, AP ranked opponents.
And all right, so let me ask you this question: if you're putting your hard-earned money right now, Team A versus Team B in the Big 12 on a neutral field, just to win the game against who you think the best team in the Big 12 is today. Now, I'm not meaning who you think makes the conference championship. Who you think the best team is today?
I would love to see an Arizona State versus Kansas matchup.
Yeah, I said can't. It's honestly an easy.
Kansas makes an argument.
It's honestly an easy answer for me. Kansas is the best team in the Big 12 right now.
And Kansas went to Tempe a couple of weeks ago and lost by 4. So I mean, even then, that was before they got on the roll. So
I was going to say that was a little earlier in the it was a little earlier.
I think you're probably right.
Yeah, like right now, nobody wants to play the Jayhawks. So, and you're right. They worked Colorado.
Yeah.
They ran for 300 plus yards.
Yep.
In that game. Wild, man, to think that Kansas has a stable of running backs that are better than 75% of college football.
Oh, yeah.
Unbelievable. But yeah, Big 12's wild, bro. We said before the year, they get caught at the Conference of Chaos, America's Conference, and all that, and it has absolutely lived up to the billing.
And they're doing their best. I mean, if Boise State gets their act together and stops messing around with these 3-9 teams, like they beat UNLV, and I mean, they're doing their best to try to give Boise State that first round bye, which I would love, nothing more than to see that. That would be funny. But Big 12 has just kind of turned into the Pac-12, and it's just kind of cannibalizing itself. It's fun to watch, man. Let's look ahead to CFP rankings on Tuesday night before we get to our rankings. We'll be back live at 8 Eastern on Tuesday night. I believe that's when the rankings are actually coming out, and we'll be able to watch them with you guys live. It was super fun. We did that a couple weeks ago. But we kind of touched on Alabama and Ole Miss, probably not going to be in the top, 12 there, maybe 11, 12 range. It's going to be interesting to see what they do with Indiana. It's going to be interesting to see what they do with SMU.
Yep.
Miami, a lot of those teams, Penn State, even I guess Georgia. See how far Georgia moves up, just playing UMass. I don't know.
SMU and Indiana are the two that I'm mostly curious of where they're going to be, and obviously how far does Alabama and Ole Miss drop? How far does A&M was not listed in the hunt? Like they were in the hunt, but they weren't listed in the.
They were 15th, right?
Yeah, they were 15th. Yeah. So, again, if they beat Texas this week, they're going to play for the SEC championship and it's going to be a do-or-die situation where if they win, they're in, lose, they're out. And I just want to touch on that one really quick. I hope that some people, because honestly, the Alabama game got so out of hand and was so – dude, even I switched the TVs. Like I had Alabama on the second TV on mute in the fourth quarter and had Auburn, Texas A&M on the big screen because it was just a much better game and a lot more exciting and people actually playing hard. And that house of just haunted house, man, that is Jordan-Hare Stadium. Tell people, I've been trying to say this for 2 years, and the unfortunate thing is, fortunate because I'm an Alabama fan, but the unfortunate thing with me trying to defend them about how hard it is to play there, they just keep losing home games the last 2 years. But like my buddies have always told me that are Auburn fans, and like you and I have been talking, it's a lot different when they play at night. Mm-hmm. And they're now 7-2 in their last 9 SEC night games at Jordan-Hare Stadium. And a lot of those games are against highly ranked opponents. And A&M found out last night. But, dude, Auburn got up 21-0, and they literally were trying to do that thing that they've been doing all year. They tried their damnedest to lose that game. They really did. And I hope that there's some college football fans that had not seen an overtime in college football in a while. They were watching that game. Even my dad, dude, who watches a ton of football, So he was sitting there last night watching the game. Then he was caught off guard and was like, "Oh yeah, they go to this stupid 2-point conversion, swapping 2-point conversion thing."
Yeah.
Even Emily, my wife, sitting on the couch, like she was like, "What are they doing?" And I was like, "Exactly. Like, what are they doing?"
Yeah,
We
just
decide
leave it up to the NCAA to ruin a beautiful college football overtime.
Yeah, I loved, like, I know some people may disagree. I loved the 25-yard line thing back in the day, and just keep going. But we can thank the Texas A&M LSU 74-72 game, which, by the way, I shouldn't even ever admit this. I had the under in that game. I had like under 62 or something in that game, and they scored 146 points. But anyway, back to the thing of the CFP. Yeah. Where are Alabama and Ole Miss, and where is Indiana and SMU? That is where, because honestly, it really does not matter. I mean, let me take that back. It does matter where the Big 12 teams are because of seeding purposes. But it doesn't matter where the Big 12 teams are in regards to, are they going to make the playoff or not? Whoever wins that conference championship is going to be in. So if Arizona State's not ranked ahead of Boise, whatever, really the only drama that's going to come from that is going to be, oh yeah, what Boise does, take care of business and win out. Maybe they are going to be that 4 seed in the playoff.
Yeah. All right, let's get to our rankings real quick. AP just dropped while we were recording.
Okay.
While you're top four stayed the same: Oregon, Ohio State, Texas, Penn State. Notre Dame moved up 1 spot to number 5. Georgia moved up 2 spots to number 6. Tennessee's at 7. You got Miami and SMU 8 and 9. Indiana fell all the way down to 10th behind SMU and Miami. Boise State 11. Clemson 12. Up 5 spots over that massive win over the Citadel for Clemson. And Alabama drops 6 spots to 13. Ole Miss drops the same, 6 spots to 15. Sandwiched in between them is Arizona State at 14. You got South Carolina just behind Ole Miss at 16. And then you got Iowa State, Tulane, BYU. A&M drops to 20. UNLV, Illinois. Colorado down to 23. Missouri had 24. And, look at that. They kept Army in there, number 25.
They kept Army in?
Kept Army in at number 25.
Okay. Well, again, this isn't the CFP, so it doesn't really matter.
All right. Like I always say, who would you put in over them?
Kansas State.
Just kidding. Lance always says that.
Yeah, I do. Kansas State.
Kansas State's 26. They are the other receiving votes.
That's hilarious. Kansas State's 30. Got 3 or 4. We're going to get into this, but let's not even get into it because we're going to go on a rabbit hole.
We'll talk about that Tuesday night of the CFP.
Yeah, Tuesday night. But I do want to say this because I texted Tyler before and I said, well, Twitter is telling me that Twitter seems to be blowing up that they think that Clemson has a chance to get into this playoff. Moose, you're my boy, and I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry to say this. Look, my team laid a freaking egg and crap down their leg last night, so I don't have any room to talk about my own team. Clemson should not be in this playoff hunt. They shouldn't. And I've been carrying the water for Dabo all year. I bet their season win total. He told me to buy stock, and I said, say less.
Someone call you Lance Sweeney.
Right. I bought that stock. But no, they should not be in this playoff hunt. They've played 3 good teams all year long and got waxed by 2 of them.
Mm-hmm.
And the third one they played, it took, honestly, one of the most miracle plays we've seen of this year with Cade Klubnik taking off running for about 800 yards down the field for a touchdown with like in the last 40 seconds of the game against Pitt.
Yeah.
If anybody should not be listed, and that includes these SEC teams that we all are going to be jumping on these next 2 days, Clemson should not be in the mix at all.
Yep.
Case closed. Go ahead.
Okay. Our top 12. Top 3 doesn't change. Oregon, Ohio State, Texas. We got Oregon was on a bye. Ohio State obviously won. Texas just messed around with Kentucky.
Yeah.
Comfortable, 31-14 win. Big news out of Austin. I don't know if you saw it. MRI for Quinn Ewers on his ankle.
Did not.
Yeah. They're optimistic that it's not serious.
I was so in my feels last night. I didn't even know that.
Well, it came out today this morning, but yeah, they're optimistic that it's not a huge deal, but they're going to get an MRI just in case. So might be Arch Manning time going into
Could
College
you
Station.
imagine Arch Manning's first SEC? I'm guessing it would be his first SEC road. Yeah, his first SEC road start be in that environment Saturday night.
Yeah, I know. We'll see. 4 and 5, we were flipped on. Consensus took it with Notre Dame and 5 Georgia.
Notre Dame looks good, man. Like I don't care the comp. Like let me do it for you, bro. I don't care the competition they're playing. They look really freaking good, dude. They really do. This is the best version of Notre Dame that I mean, again, you've watched 8 zillion more Notre Dame games than I have. This is the best version of Notre Dame that I've seen. And for those that don't know, they're doing this. I know, yes, it is against some weaker competition, okay? But they are annihilating these teams. And they have so many injuries. Like really good players.
Yeah.
Like Howard Cross out last night. Howard Cross and Benjamin Morrison. Benjamin Morrison's out for the season.
Yeah.
Those are two soon to be NFL like stars.
Yeah.
Not NFL like we're going to make a roster, like NFL stars. And they're not even playing. And it doesn't matter. Like they're just it's like next man up. They just whip whoever's ass is on their schedule. So
yeah, and we called that one last night. I mean, I don't usually bet on Notre Dame games, but 14. I mean, it was crazy. People are actually picking Army to win that game. Like, easy to see a mile away. As soon as that first drive, 3-and-out Army, then you get the ball. Notre Dame does nothing but just run down the field, and Jeremiah Love jumps 20 feet in the air over a guy. And
I think he had 18 yards per carry, bro.
Yeah, it's just the speed differential, everything.
18 yards per carry, bro.
Yeah, so I mean, again, you can talk about the competition all you want. They're doing what a lot of these other teams in the top 20 or so are not doing with teams that are, again, the teams are like, again, I would probably respect, me personally, I would respect a win at Oklahoma over a win over Army. But they're not power rated super different. Like you're talking Oklahoma and Army on a neutral field, it's a 5 or 6 point spread probably. So it's not like these teams are dominating like Vandy, Nebraska, Minnesota, like a lot of those teams. So they're just taking care of business. Average win margin of 32 points per game during this 9-game win streak since that week 2 debacle, which is still weighing them down. So number 5, Georgia, just a massive, massive W over UMass yesterday. And I know
for those that don't know, Tyler and I, we don't disagree a ton. If you listen to this show, like some shows you want people probably sitting there just going at each other's throats over things. One of the only things that we do go at each other over about is Tyler despises with every fiber in his being how the SEC has these cupcake games in November. And I'll always clap back at him and be like, okay, bro, who you want him to schedule? Would it be better if they scheduled Toledo? Like schedule a MAC team instead of one of these teams? Like just go beat one of those teams by 40 instead?
I just don't think they take enough crap for it. And they give crap to Ohio State and all them for scheduling Western Michigan and Akron in September. And then, lo and behold, I mean, if Georgia, honestly, again, it was probably the opponent, and they don't give a crap about yesterday's game, but you come out like Alabama did, like, right? Alabama wasn't playing Mercer yesterday, right? So Georgia comes out a little flat. You're playing UMass. Like, you got a lot of time to make up. And November should be for days like yesterday and road games at Florida and at Oklahoma and at Minnesota and all this stuff. Like, that's what November should be about, not playing UMass and Louisiana Tech and Wofford and even the ACC teams, the wannabe SEC teams, Clemson and Florida State playing Charleston Southern and the Citadel. Like, just drives me crazy. Like, my whole thing with this, and I'll get it out of the way, SEC, in my opinion, best overall conference, hands down, right? But the sense of entitlement from that conference and the fact that they just feel like they're entitled to 5 or 6 teams in the playoff no matter what, when there really are just, I mean, there are a bunch of teams in that conference this year, and it kind of sucks because last year they were, had a little more top heavy, but a bunch of teams in that conference with wins over each other that we're not sure if they're really good wins or not. Like, a lot of their strength of schedule, a lot of their good wins are propped up by these dumb preseason rankings when they got 8 teams in the top 25. Like, they're just beating up on each other just like the Pac-12 and the Big 12 are doing.
Yeah.
And I, Greg Sankey's trying to, mold the sport in his, God-given image. And he just wants to he wants to give you credit for playing the game more than winning them. Like, so props to Ole Miss for going on the road and playing a tough 5-5 Florida team. So
and just to
bring it
I
over.
just want to clean one thing up. You referenced the Pac-12. You were referencing the fact of like last year, the Pac-12, how
Yeah, I'm not talking about Washington State, Oregon State, and
exactly.
their battle last
I just don't
night.
want somebody to be like, "All right, you're talking about the Pac-12. There's not even a Pac-12." Like,
Yeah, and
you're
I'm not
referencing
saying
you're referencing last year.
I'm not saying the SEC is like the SEC is better than the Pac-12 was last year. Like, the quality of players in the league are above everybody else, save for a couple teams in the Big Ten.
Your problem has been just more about how, because you've talked to me about it off air. Correct me if I'm wrong. Your problem has more been about how they've got to constantly go around and borderline gloat about it.
Yeah, and they feel like we deserve 5 or 6 teams in that playoff, and then you go and have a weekend like you did yesterday, and you're like, well, shoot, you shouldn't have done all that talking.
And hey, you know me, SEC Lance here. I would be the first to pound this table and would come on this show and fight that argument against you if these SEC teams were taking care of their business.
Yeah,
they're not. So notice, I'm not clapping back at you right now about your take just now.
Well, and honestly, I mean, we could have probably done one more year with just 4 teams. Like this, it's a rough year to go to 12 teams, because now you're looking at it and you're like, man, are there even 12 teams like worthy of being in the playoff? And maybe they could have bumped up to 8. That's a discussion for a different time. But last year would have been crazy because, I mean, we had 4 undefeated teams, all from the power conferences, and I don't know. We're getting off in the weeds here. Anyways, Notre Dame 4, Georgia 5, Tennessee 6. Again, another solid win over UTEP. But they did. I mean, they took care of business. They did what they did against Kent State earlier in the year.
Yeah.
So there, no issues there. And then this is where we get a little interesting. We've got Indiana at 7 and Penn State at 8. I think you actually I had
Penn State
Lions at 7 and Indiana at 8.
Yep. And honestly, that has everything to do with that. I mean, Indiana has looked very impressive against everybody else.
It has everything to do with that big 1-point win up in Minneapolis, right?
Yeah. I mean, I can't believe that PJ Fleck was not prepared for the fake punt in that situation. Unbelievable. Yeah. And I can't believe that James Franklin, who our boy Matt Massaros, like he says, who coaches scared to death and must win games like yesterday. And for the most part, he did coach scared to death again. Yeah. And then out of nowhere, in the second half, Penn State opens up the offense and goes more spread and starts going tempo. And they look like a much better offense because they're actually slinging it around and looking like a 2024 type of an offense, running the football, very balanced. And the fact that late in the fourth quarter, deep in his own territory, he fake punted. And we're saying, can't believe PJ Fleck wasn't prepared for that. I mean, I don't think anybody thought that James Franklin had the guts to do that, and he did it. So, but yeah, I had Penn State ahead of Indiana, and you had Indiana ahead of Penn State. I got to be honest with you, I never even texted back and argued about it because I don't think you're just splitting hairs. These two teams, and they pretty much have the same resumes. The only difference is Indiana got dog walked by Ohio State, but Indiana also has dog walked all these other teams, and Penn State hasn't necessarily done that to some of these other teams. So. I've got no problem with them being ranked one after another and don't really have any quarrel with who should be ranked ahead of who.
That's one of the matchups that, like, just forecasting here, we might be seeing Indiana at Penn State in the first round of the playoffs.
Yep.
You got Penn State, who's got Maryland coming up. Indiana's got Purdue. Both should take care of business. Penn State could possibly slot into a 6 or a 7 seed, and you're looking at maybe a 10 or 11 for Indiana. So that one just might be settled on the field. We'll have to see. We've got SMU ahead of Miami, 9 and 10.
Love it.
And I mean, both of them took care of business. SMU went on the road, beat Virginia. Miami took care of business against Wake Forest.
SMU has looked like the more complete team this year, as far as both sides of the ball. Miami's defense is trash. SMU's actually got a solid defense. I mean, they're not great, but they're solid defensively. Both have really good offenses. Really good quarterbacks. Ever since SMU made the switch to Kevin Jennings at quarterback, they've been so good throughout this year. And again, I know that people want to try to knock the ACC, whatever. Overall, as a conference, it definitely does not have the depth that the Big Ten or the SEC has. But as far as an ACC championship game, if we do get SMU versus Miami, that is going to be one extremely exciting, high-flying football game with two really good quarterbacks and two really good offenses in that game. And I'm not so sure that SMU doesn't beat Miami in that game. But it'd be a heck of a football game, and it wouldn't shock me either way who ends up winning. But yeah, we've got SMU at 9 and Miami at 10. And I mean, both of them, correct me if I'm wrong, both of them's best win is the same team, Louisville.
Yeah, SMU's going to win over Pitt too.
Yep, and Miami's got to win. That win, again, completely different Florida team, but that's not Miami's fault, so I'm not going to hold it against them. But they beat Florida in the Swamp week 1. That Florida team and the Florida team that's being put on the field now, not even in the same stratosphere of the same team.
Yeah.
But again, I'm not holding it against Miami. That's fine. They still beat Florida to death in the Swamp.
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting test case if those two meet up in the ACC championship game at 11-1. Obviously, the winner's going on to the playoff, and the loser will be 11-2. And we talked about it a ton yesterday. What will they do with that extra game? Especially if it's like, I mean, what if it's like a 37-34 game, right? And it's back and forth, and one team just comes out on top, last second field goal. It rarely works out that way. But what if that happens and, like, you're really going to punish one of those teams? I mean, I know their resumes don't stack up against a lot of other teams, but, just they would have been better off sitting at home, right? Like Clemson.
Yeah, no, I've said it all year, man. It sets the precedent. If Miami and SMU are for sure they're in the playoff field going into that game, and one of them gets left out after that game, the only way, and I have said this, the only way that should happen is if that stupid language that the committee has put in is if Team B is unequivocally better than that team that we're talking about. And here's the thing. It's probably Alabama or Ole Miss that we're going to be talking about.
Well, how about if A&M beats Texas and then A&M beats Georgia, and then you got a 3-loss SEC runner-up in Georgia versus a 2-loss.
I'd have Georgia.
Yeah, well, I know you would.
I'd have Georgia. But but listen, man, in all seriousness, I'll say this publicly. As of right now, dude, I can't say that I think that Alabama is just unequivocally better than those two teams.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know that they are.
24 hours ago, you could.
Yes, I could. Yes, I could. But but they just keep, they're not taking care of business like they should.
Yeah. Georgia
losing in the SEC championship game to a Texas, in my opinion, would be significantly different than Alabama losing to 5-loss, 6-loss, whatever, Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's the difference in that. So I think in that scenario, I would put Georgia in. But
what do you think the committee does with Georgia? Because, I mean, we're talking about how Alabama moved up over Miami last week because some of their wins got better and, losses, Louisville losing affected Miami. In Georgia, they have obviously lost Alabama and Ole Miss. They're still good teams, but they didn't look great. So, does that go both ways?
I don't know, man, because, again, they seem to, like Alabama, for example, everybody was like, I can't believe they jumped Alabama up so many spots after they beat Mercer. They didn't jump Alabama a bunch of spots because they beat Mercer. They jumped them up because 3 teams ahead of them or 2 teams ahead of them lost.
Yeah.
And a couple of their biggest wins, Georgia just took care of business against Tennessee last weekend, and South Carolina won again. So those wins got better. Well, Texas continues to win. They're ranked number 3. Tennessee is going to be ranked even higher. So Georgia's wins against those 2 teams are going to look even better. I think that trumps the fact that they lost Alabama and Ole Miss, and those losses now don't look as, they look worse or whatever.
Yeah. Speaking of Alabama, we got them at number 11 somehow, some way. They're number 11 in our poll. We got Arizona State at number 12. Props to Sparky, forks up. I actually had Arizona State above Alabama. But by average, Alabama slots in at number 11. Arizona State at number 12. I'm just a huge Kenny Dillingham fan now.
Yeah, me too. Love him, dude. He's like one of the boys.
I was listening to a podcast with him the other day, him being interviewed, and I just was listening to him. I was like, I don't need to hear anything else. I'm betting Arizona State -3 against BYU. That was it. It wasn't even anything to do with the game. I was like, this guy knows how to win. And I mean, he's doing the same thing that Jed Fish did with Arizona last year, right? Just taking over a team that was in turmoil in the dumps and propping them up to where they're 2 wins away from a playoff appearance. Crazy.
Yep, agreed.
Harken back to the Jake Plummer days.
Yep. We've got Alabama and Arizona State 11-12. I think that, judging by the AP poll, I'm very intrigued now to see where the committee is going to have Clemson. After what I just saw in the AP, like I thought the people on Twitter were idiots. Yeah, maybe I'm the idiot.
Well, I mean, we do our rankings just based on a bunch of different factors, and kind of sometimes it's like who do we think is really better. And we're not going to go the whole who would be favored in Vegas or whatever, because honestly, that's the dumbest argument. It doesn't mean anything. No. And I know they're all unbalanced schedules and they're all different schedules. I mean, if you really break it down, all 134 teams in conference in FBS play the different schedules.
Yep.
I know SEC and all that's different, but everybody plays a different schedule, and you're handed that at the beginning of the year and sometimes 5 years in advance. And you just got to figure out what to do with it. So, top 12 recap: Oregon, Ohio State, Texas, Notre Dame is the top 4. Then you got number 5, Georgia, number 6, Tennessee, number 7, Indiana, 8, Penn State, 9, SMU, 10, Miami, 11, Alabama, 12, Arizona State. Did you ever think you'd see Alabama, Arizona State next to each other in the poll?
Nah, man, it makes me sad. I did not.
It's going to be really interesting on Tuesday night. Come join us. It's going to be interesting too. Like, do they move Georgia? Like, does Georgia actually go ahead of Indiana in the CFP ranking, the committee rankings? Or are they still just going to look at that right side column, that loss column, and all that? I mean, I don't know.
I'll be shocked if Georgia's not ahead.
Yeah. All right, let's finish off with a little rivalry week. Guess the spread. Lance is going to give us his best picks here. I've got a good set of games. This is also a good opportunity for us to maybe throw out some bets and give you guys what the early lines are. So we're going to start on Thursday night. No, Friday. I think it's Friday. Egg Bowl, Mississippi State at Ole Miss. A lot of these games are going to touch on teams that are kind of still in the mix somehow.
So it's a Friday afternoon game. On
they moved it to Thursday night, right?
Yeah. I think we only get Tulane and Memphis. I think are the only Thursday night game this year.
Yeah. So Mississippi State at Ole Miss. It's gonna be a tough one.
Ole Miss 24 and a half.
Ole Miss 26 and a half.
Okay,
right on the right track. Another Friday night game. Georgia Tech at Georgia.
At Georgia. Georgia 21 and a half.
Georgia 20 and a half.
Okay.
I would watch out if I was Georgia there. If you remember last year, they played them really well.
Yeah.
Brent Key as an underdog. Obviously, we saw it with Miami.
Mm-hmm.
Really good. It's going to be tough doing it in Athens, but crazier things have happened. Noon on Saturday. Gosh, I wish this game was prime time. That'd be sick. South Carolina at Clemson, which all of a sudden just has, quite a few implications on it.
They should flip-flop this game with the Iron Bowl. The Iron Bowl should be at noon now.
Yeah.
All right, South Carolina at Clemson. 3, Clemson.
Clemson minus 2.5.
Okay.
The game, Michigan at Ohio State.
Buckeyes 21.
20 and a half.
20 and a half?
20 and a half.
I thought you said 28 and a half. I was like,
nope, 20 and a half.
Okay, 20 and a half. All
right. Tricky spot here at noon. Tennessee traveling to Nashville at Vandy. All you got to do is win, and you're in, man.
Diego Pavia time.
Can he do it one more time?
This would put a bow on the... Greg Sankey would literally... I don't think they'll let Vandy win this one. Not even the SEC office can stop Diego Pavia, maybe, though.
Yeah, that's true.
Tennessee... 11 and a half.
10 and a half.
10 and a half?
10 and a half.
Okay.
3:30 on CBS, Notre Dame at USC. Again, win and you're in. Actually, I mean, Notre Dame, now that everything's just crumbling around them, they'd probably be out with a loss. So win and you're in.
I don't know that they would, bro. Fair or not.
I mean,
because of all the carnage.
Two really bad losses.
You're
on their
right.
schedule.
You're right. But still, I don't know. Yeah, probably not. Probably
Yeah.
not. Oh gosh, I ain't got a clue. It's at USC.
At USC, 3:30 kickoff, so 12:30 local time out there.
Notre Dame, 16.5.
Notre Dame 6.5.
That's the largest miss I've had all year. Notre Dame is only 6.5, bro.
Yeah. But USC is still very, very highly power rated. I think K Ford got it around 6.5 too. I mean, it's crazy. Might be your first bet of the week, huh?
That line freaks me out so much that I'm not going to give it out right now. I was about to just, like, right here on the show, just talk about all these loans I was about to take out on the Irish. But no, I'll refrain. Okay. I was way off on that one.
He's got it as a 9.5 point neutral field. So, I mean.
Yeah, the Coliseum, that's a really tough. That's a tough place to play. So I
especially at 12:30 on the afternoon.
Yeah, that's tough, man. They definitely should get a lot of credit for that.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Next game, Border War, Washington and Oregon.
By the way, I was being sarcastic for the people that are listening on the audio version only. Couldn't see my facial expressions. All right, say it again. Washington at Oregon.
Washington and Oregon.
Ooh, major revenge for the Ducks after 2 L's last year to the Huskies. I will say Ducks and Eugene 17.
19.5.
Okay.
Yeah. Farmageddon. Kansas State at Iowa State. Iowa State win, and you are in the Big 12 championship game. Chance for a playoff somehow for Matt Campbell.
Iowa State 2.5, 3.
Yep, 2.5.
Okay.
We talked about this one earlier. Territorial Cup. Arizona State at Arizona. Again, winning, you're in the Big 12 championship.
Arizona State 10, 9, 10 range.
Arizona State 8.5.
So close. Yeah.
Yeah, and you were a winner yesterday against Arizona one more time.
Yep. Every team they play that's any good offensively, they get killed.
Yep. Iron Bowl, Auburn at Alabama.
Bama 10.5.
Bama 11.5. 24 hours ago, it was 14.5.
Okay.
Yeah. 11.5, Alabama. Miami at Syracuse. Win, and you are in the ACC championship game. That's all you got to do.
Canes 10.
10.5.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm close on all these besides that one. I was way off. Good Lord.
Yeah. Bucket game. Again, probably winning. You're in for Indiana. Purdue at Indiana.
Ooh.
In Bloomington.
Probably one of the largest spreads they've had in this game.
Oh, yeah.
IU 20, 27.
27.5.
Oh, I was close. Okay. I just thought a random number. All right.
I'll have to look into that here a second. That might be a bet right there.
Yeah.
Let's finish off. Texas at Texas A&M.
I'm going to say Horns 6.5.
Horns 6.5 is what it is. And that leads us into, if we've got any early best bets, I've got actually 2. I bet A&M when it came out plus 7.5.
Nice.
At home.
Good number.
No faith in the Horns.
Good number.
I also saw another line that I was just like, what in the world? Kansas, talked about them, best team in the Big 12 right now.
Mm-hmm.
Going on the road to Baylor. What do you think that line would be? We'll do another guess, right? What do you think that line is? Kansas at Baylor.
Baylor's been playing solid. Kansas 2.5.
Nope. Baylor was minus 1.5.
Really?
So I just said, you know what? Give me Kansas on the money line, going into Waco, win straight up, finish off the regular season, get the bowl eligibility, 6-6.
Interesting nugget there too is Kansas's offensive coordinator Jeff Grimes got let go by Baylor,
Yep.
and like I said, he's the offensive coordinator now for Kansas. When Nicky went to from Kansas to Penn State, that's who
Yeah.
Leipold replaced Nicky with was Jeff Grimes. So just an interesting little nugget there.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to take him on the money line. Baylor's been playing well, but Kansas got to get one more win for that bowl eligibility after starting like 1-6 or something, and 2-6. I don't know. And I think they get it done. And wouldn't it be nice to see like somehow a Florida Kansas bowl game or something like that right now?
Yeah, as far as all, how like these other bowl games, there's going to be so many teams that have a bunch of players that are not going to play and miss out.
Yeah,
Kansas will have everybody playing, and Florida would probably have everybody playing.
Yeah, what bowl do we think Alabama and Ole Miss are going to get? Like, they're going to get the Cheez-It Bowl or Pop-Tarts Bowl or something like that?
I don't know, man. Something like that. I can't even imagine. Kids, seriously, think about all the players that won't play. For the game. Good Lord. I don't even know.
Especially Ole Miss.
Yeah, I don't even know if they have enough players to fill the roster. But yeah, you're right. Ole Miss, especially.
Yeah.
A bunch of hired mercenaries, senior transfers that are just waiting to go pro. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. All right. You got anything else?
Nope. I don't have any bets at the moment.
Okay. That's it for us. What a wild Saturday it was. We predicted chaos. We finally got it. And we got one more full Saturday of college football coming up. That's it. That's all we get. Conference championship, we get, 10 games. And then we get bowl games sporadically here and out. So we get one more Saturday. So take advantage of it. It's the best sport on earth. Appreciate you guys listening and following. Spotify, Apple, YouTube, Instagram, all that stuff. You know the deal. Go follow us. Share the page. Give us a rating. We appreciate it. We'll be back on Tuesday night for our live college football playoff rankings, 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 Central. And we'll see what kind of mess the committee can cook up this week. So we appreciate it. Until next time.